Hi, welcome. I'm Steve Pleich, and I'll be your host for this edition of Nonprofit Spotlight. Nonprofit Spotlight is a production of the Volunteer Advisory Committee here at Community Television. And each month we highlight an organization in our city and county that's doing great work in the community itself. And this month we're really pleased to have people from the Santa Cruz Public Libraries. And thank you so much for being here. We have Susan Nemitz, who is the director, and Janis, who is the deputy director. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much.
So, Susan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be director of our great Santa Cruz Public Library system?
Well, I had the pleasure of being the director of the public library system in Ramsey County, which is outside of St. Paul, Minnesota. I had the opportunity to do that for 11 years.
Wow.
And during that time period, I had the opportunity to renovate or replace 7 libraries.
No
So
kidding.
I think one of the reasons they were interested in me as a library director was my experience in redoing buildings for 21st century library models.
That's it. And Janis, you were the interim director when Teresa stepped aside, Teresa Adams, as we know. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of, you have been here for some time.
I've been here, I've been with the library since 1986. I can't believe it,
That's
but
wonderful.
that's true.
Yeah.
And I started out as a children's librarian, and somehow I am the deputy director, and I can't quite remember how that happened. I've seen so many changes, and I'm so excited for what's about to happen with the Santa Cruz Public Libraries now.
And as a library patron, and I was saying earlier that I go to the library maybe 4 or 5 times a week myself, I've noticed a change in the culture. What used to be kind of a silent and separated, patrons, now it's engagement, it's conversation, it's more lively, and I really congratulate, this library system for encouraging that.
Yeah, we're really excited. I think you saw probably in the 1990s a move back from focusing solely on reading more to focusing on learning, which is actually more consistent with our roots as libraries. A lot of public libraries, as they developed around the turn of the century, really were focused on helping immigrants with whatever learning needs they had become part of American society. And so it's interesting that sort of what is old is new again, but it's helping people with jobs, it's helping people with developing their English language skills, it's helping people with a variety of learning needs and personal development.
And Janis, having been here since 1986, I'm sure you've seen some of those changes take place as well.
Yes, so many changes. It's very exciting to be in public libraries right now. But the interesting thing is, though, we're doing very different things and lots more programs on lots of different subjects. It's still the same thing that a library did many years ago. The library was always there to make a connection between a piece of information and the people who needed it. And we're still doing that. It just so happens that we're connecting them to code, or we're connecting them to having book discussions rather than something that might be sitting on a shelf.
And before we start to talk about really the new and exciting, a lot of things that are happening there, I also wanted to mention that as a library patron, I really appreciate the outreach the library is doing, particularly Miley Frieda McGrew with, she's having the coffee classes on Thursday morning, and really bringing people into the library community feeling welcome. So that, we want to thank you as a community for that kind of thing. I think that's wonderful. So tell us what's new and exciting happening in our library system.
Well, let's start with Measure S, which happened last June. And the voters agreed to invest $63 million more in our physical facilities. And I think if you go around the system, Scotts Valley and Live Oak libraries are actually relatively new.
They are,
But many of our libraries haven't been updated in 50 plus years. I think the downtown example is probably the one that comes to mind. The furniture we have downtown really is from 1968 when that building opened.
I didn't know that.
So we have a long way to go on our facility infrastructure, and the great thing about Measure S is it's going to allow us to remodel and in some cases replace all of our facilities. So I wanted to talk about a couple of the projects,
do,
if that's
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
I think the one that's sort of heading out the gate first is the Capitola Branch Library. And
Whereas
I'm
that's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yes.
17 years
Yeah,
they've
boy, oh
planned for a
boy,
new
yeah,
library.
yeah.
And that community is so excited and
I'm sure
so
they are.
involved. They have worked really hard and diligently to create a design, and now they're starting a fundraising team to help get some of the amenities for the library that doesn't necessarily come in the construction project itself. I think your staff has on the camera some pictures of the library as designed by Nolan Tam, which is a firm out of Berkeley.
Now, is this going to be on the same location, same site?
It is on the
Okay.
same site.
So I know there was some talk a while back of moving over to Rispin Lodge and all that business, which I thought was a little dicey considering you have to go across back and forth across street and stuff like that. I thought the present location was great, but that is a wonderful architectural rendering of that.
We're really, really excited.
Yes.
It's probably going to quadruple the amount of space in the building. Right now, we're in sort of 6 pods. Is that what you'd call them?
No, 6
Temporary?
mobile classrooms.
Okay,
And it was
sure.
supposed to be temporary. It was temporary for 17 years.
Well, it's temporary. Like the Pleistocene era was, millions of years. So 17
Right,
is not,
there you
not
go.
quite so many.
And the current site has this beautiful playground, park-like atmosphere, this
It does,
gorgeous
yeah.
tree. So they're planning a library that sort of wraps itself around the park and the tree. And it's going to really build off amazing children's programs that we already have at the
I should
library
say,
there.
yeah.
But really gives the children and their parents space enough. Right now, if you look at a children's program in the Capitola Library, it's just sort of amongst the stacks and the
Right.
overflow behind
Right.
tables. And so it really gives that community a children's space that's worthy of its use.
And I think it's wonderful and notable that the Live Oak Library, when they put that in not so many years ago now, has a wonderful children's
Oh, it's
section. It's
gorgeous.
it's beautiful. It's a
Beautiful.
model of what. So, Janis, your observations about kind of the new things that are going to be happening here with the new construction and maybe renovating some of the older branches?
The best thing that we're doing is we're making flexible spaces, because we had the opportunity to do a strategic plan last year in 2016. So we went out to the community and we said, what do you want in your library? What do you need to be able to do? And we got 1,000 responses, over 1,000
Is that right?
responses. And what we learned, what we kind of knew, was that families wanted to use the library, and seniors want to use the library, and business people and co-working people. And so what we needed were spaces that could be flexible, that could be a story time place in the morning, and could be a book discussion group place in the afternoon, and maybe be a citizen science program in the evening.
Right.
And we need that in all of our branches. And so to me, the most exciting thing is that kind of flexibility we're going to see in all of our branches.
And I heard a lot about that. Janis, you were here, and perhaps Susan not, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago when we were in a pretty deep recession,
Yes.
and they were talking about closing some of the branches.
Yes.
And the community came out in force,
Right.
packed the city council chambers
Right.
many nights, talking
Right.
about the very things you're talking about.
Exactly.
Services for seniors, services for youth,
Right.
services for that. And fortunately, we passed that curve, but maybe we're in a better place financially, and certainly with a broader vision.
I
Yeah.
do think, though, that we've accepted in part the economic realities. We have a new and different kind of economy. And so part of the newer model really is to have a community-led learning process.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see a lot more volunteers in the library. You'll see a lot more of the programs are actually presented by organizations and experts within our own community. And so I think we're embracing the realities of the economic situation in some ways by pulling the community deeper into the library and having them help us create this learning platform for their neighbors.
And it really does foster that sense of engagement of the
Yeah,
community
absolutely.
in the library. I think that's wonderful. Tell us about Central, downtown. That's the kind of the jewel in the crown, has been that way for a long time. All of us love the downtown library. We had a picture of it here. But, you know, times are bringing changes, and changes, I
Yes.
think, in a different and better way.
Well, we have $23 million for the downtown project. Unlike Capitola and even the Felton project that has had a tight community group working on a plan for many years, I think we're really in some ways just beginning the discussion process with downtown and pulling in different groups and getting different perspectives on it. The city of Santa Cruz appointed 10 citizens who are now meeting every other week to discuss major issues about the downtown library. They're extraordinary people. I've been so impressed by them, and they're working really, really hard. I think we're still in the phase of gathering information about what does a 21st century library mean for the downtown facilities, and what are our priorities given limited resources. In the late fall, though, they're going to start looking at options and make a recommendation to the city council, we hope by the end of the year.
Yes.
Well, that's terrific. Of course, now with an expansion of space, you're going to have more people who are going to be involved, not only patrons, but also volunteers and supervised volunteers and all that. How does that work out for you in terms of a manager of employees and folks and people who are really working there and reaching out to the patrons?
Well, we've been having long conversations about how you manage this. You know, we've been talking about things like radical trust, and I think, at least I'm a type A person, and part of this is letting go and letting the community lead. I think in the end, what you get is really strong grassroots support and ownership of this amazing public entity. So we recognize the outcome and how important it is, but I think part of it is letting go and trusting and letting people experiment and play. So we have a ways to go, but you know, just like our citizen science program is an example of something the librarians.
Tell us a little bit about that. That's fascinating.
I think you probably know more, but my point is that it's not the librarians that are doing the presentation. It's people from the community that are coming in and teaching the community about science.
Our citizen science program takes advantage of the fact that we're a university town. We have all these wonderful graduate students
very much in favor of
who
that.
are studying all kinds of fascinating things, lots about the Monterey Bay, but all kinds of science subjects. And we also have a community that's very interested in science as well. So once a month, we bring in an expert. Lots of times it's a graduate student, sometimes it's a professor in the field, and they talk about what they're studying and what's important to them, and the public gets to learn more about the migration of the elephant seals, more about the shearwaters and how they make that wonderful circle around our area. All that kind of thing. We even had one where we live streamed condors down in Big Sur.
Is that right?
And so we could sit and watch the condors while the graduate student was speaking, and it was really hard for her because we would see the condor and she was trying to say something. But it's that kind of even being able to talk to people who may not be right in the room, but we will have the technology to continue bringing information in all those kinds of ways.
And I think that's wonderful. I've wanted for a long period of time to find a way to not only engage but kind of anchor that brain trust that we get from UCSC that really bleeds away when they graduate and then they leave out from town. There's no incubator spaces or nothing that's really holding them down to say, gosh, I'm part of this, I'm part of the community, I want to stay here and build my career here.
And I think we definitely heard that from the public when we went out and did
Interesting.
our surveys. So.
And having the community involved means that we can be very flexible. So as interests change and things become important in Santa Cruz County, we can be very light on our feet and switch around to what the community really needs.
So last fall we did a series of forums on immigration issues, and it was just very well timed. Again, we don't have to be the experts. We can find the experts in the community, but make the library this trusted place where people can get information that they really need.
Yeah.
And I know I was mentioning Miley's name. She is leading a
Yes.
group that's trying to put some awareness on houselessness and that kind of thing. And not only coffee clutches, but there's a group of us actually, the core group that's met, and to see what we can do to work with. And she's leading this, you know, she's saying it,
Yes.
but she's having the community members come in and say, what do you think about this? And how can the
Yeah.
library work with you to
Exactly.
foster your ideas? You know, and that's important.
And how can we engage the community in a conversation about this?
Yeah.
Because in many ways, the Santa Cruz community is really divided on some of these issues. And we really need to help people have these conversations so that we can really begin to address these issues.
And I think it's very courageous of the library itself really to take on the tough issues, you know, the issues that kind of reflect our community values. And they do, as you say, Janis, they change from time to time. They change over time. Some
And
things
we
more
are
important than
able
others.
to be a neutral
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you continue to do that. I know one of the wonderful things you always have over there is kind of the bag lunches you have upstairs with the
Oh, yes.
performances and things like those. It's just fantastic.
And we also are doing a series, sort of business skills related, working with Cabrillo College. So I think people might be surprised on any given day how many things are going on in the library.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up some operational changes that are being
Please do,
made
absolutely.
as well. You know, we realize with this investment of resources in our facilities, we also find this a perfect time to make some changes in our operations as well. We went to our Joint Powers Board and said we want to do some investments in some of the key things we feel like we need to work on. So we got $300,000, and we've been able to replace every single one of our public computers, some of which were 11 years old.
Yes.
We've been able to add public computers in some places, or we're going to, by mid-September, add a series of laptops so people can check out a laptop within the building. That's really great for like a mom who wants to watch their child in a children's room,
Yes.
but also needs to do something on the computer really quickly. It just allows flexibility. I have to say downtown, the computers were a source of stress because we were rationing computer use to 1
Yes.
hour a day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for someone trying to apply for a job,
Oh,
that's
no
just
doubt.
not enough. And so really to try to get away from rationing this precious information resource and give people the time that they need. We've also been able to bring fiber to all our buildings, so we're going to have 10 times the bandwidth
Right.
we've
Is
had
that
in
right?
the past.
Now, who's providing that? Is that...
It's through Scenic, which is a partnership across the state of California that
wonderful.
libraries
Okay.
are involved
Excellent. That's great.
in. We're also moving to some wireless printing because we have so many people in our libraries who have their own devices and could not print through our system. And we interestingly, this was another thing that came out in a survey was a surprising number of people use us for printing, even though we charge for it. They don't have those that hardware at home. We also got the JPA to do a one-time investment of $300,000 into our collection. We had some very long waiting lists for some popular items, so we were able to shorten greatly the waits towards popular literature and media. And then we also, the most exciting piece that I can
Yay.
barely sit still over is we got the JPA to invest in a pilot where we would expand hours. So as of
Amen.
June 1st,
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
as of June 1st, all 10 libraries have expanded their hours. The fewest number of hours a week a library will be open is 36. We added a weekend day at every single branch. We've added...
I noticed the Live Oak has come back online for its... what?
Fridays.
It's Fridays,
for
wonderful,
Friday.
yeah.
And
And-
Felton is open Sunday.
Oh, no kidding, that's
So we're
great.
trying to do a Sunday in each of the 3 regions because we found we have a lot of working parents
Yeah.
who really needed weekends to use the library. And the feedback has been wonderful. It expands our programming both for kids in the morning, for adults in the evening, and then provides that access on weekends that I think was really missing.
Well, as a patron, I can tell you that having seen the very long lines of people kind of waiting at downtown Central Library as soon as the doors open to get onto the computers, and now there's a proliferation of all those computers, people having the time, able to conduct their business. You know, it's a learning center, it's a business center, and I wanted to really compliment the library system on putting in the charging stations.
Oh, good.
It's been,
That's just amazing.
it's been popular with everyone. We did a pilot downtown.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to see, we have so few electrical outlets downtown. What you would see is people with the long extension, orange extension cords, 20 feet. And it's a danger to the public because they would be trying to find the one outlet in the wall. So we put in some charging stations, and downtown it was incredibly popular.
Yeah.
So now we've added them at all branches.
Well, it really makes it so much more of a welcoming space, and I think that's important. That is, part of the atmosphere that you're creating.
Yeah.
And I think that really comes from the staff, comes from leadership, and really that's something that you both can be proud of because leadership does set the tone. Economic situations change, the interest or community values change, but the library itself, you set the tone and the atmosphere of what the community is going to be able to, enjoy and really benefit from the library system. And I think it's important. So congratulations to both of you. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have, this show and really get the people a chance to meet you, people who are setting the tone and doing this great work. But tell us more about all this exciting things going on.
We talk a little bit about programming because I think there's some
Please do.
amazing
Absolutely.
things happening.
One of the most popular things that we do is our after-school programming. And people who have kids in school would be familiar with the word STEAM, but STEAM actually stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so what we do is we focus on having programs in those areas for students after school. So it could be learning concepts in physics with Legos. You could be learning engineering by building a robot. And they do build robots, and then they have fights and a robot wins. So you've got all that wonderful excitement. And we're also launching a program to teach kids how to code. And so that's something everybody's probably going to need in the not too distant future, so they get a start after school in a fun kind of way.
And let me hasten to mention one other thing that I think is really admirable and notable about the library system is your Veterans Resource Center.
Yes.
Say just a little bit about that because that's a wonderful service and much needed and really innovative in its way.
It started with grants from the state of California, and then we have become a Veterans Resource Center. And what that means is the local veterans can volunteer at the center, at the downtown branch, and come in and get help, not just with VA benefits that they may or may not be aware that they qualify for, but any kind of help that a veteran might need. And I want to be sure to say that it's a veteran of any conflict. So we still see people who are veterans from Vietnam who maybe did not get the benefits that they were entitled to. They still can. And of course, we see the young military who are just coming back from very recent
From
tours.
the Gulf Wars conflicts, yes.
But when they walk in, they're talking to a fellow veteran. And then we do what libraries always do. We make the connection between what they need and the place they need to go to find it.
Well, it's a marvelous ability. And you have more programs to talk about?
Well, I think we're also really expanding our adult programs.
Yes, very much.
One of the things we're really struggling with, honestly, is that probably the single biggest barrier for adults to their learning journey, their learning question, is they get stopped by technology. We've all done it. It's 2 in the morning, you're trying to do something, and suddenly something won't work and you're going crazy. So what we found at our reference desks is people coming up and asking really complex questions about technology, but also sometimes really basic questions, but people don't have the basic skills.
Right, of course, yeah. That's
I'm-
not uncommon, really.
Yeah, I'm of the age where
yeah.
I graduated from college without using a personal computer. And I think there's a lot of people in our society have
I
that
think
been
that's
that way.
absolutely right.
But our reference folks don't necessarily have the time to teach someone how to get an email account and send their resume in. So we're doing more and more programming around basic tech skills.
And job applications, almost any kind of job you can think of, you have to apply online.
And it's interesting you say that. don't watch much television, but I did happen to stream something the other night, and it was an older fellow who had written a screenplay, and he held up to his son. He says, "How do I make this a PDF?"
Yeah, that's right.
So, well, Dad, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, he could
really.
have told him he could have scanned it, but he said you can't make it PDF. So
And
just
so
learn that.
We're going to try to help them one-on-one, but
Yeah.
sometimes we say, you know what, here's some classes you should
Right.
take because this is a more efficient way
Yeah.
to accomplish your goals.
And the other connection we want to make is co-working space is very popular all over the country. in
We have it
Virginia,
here
in
in our
Santa
building
Cruz
at
County.
CTV, absolutely, yeah.
But some people, when they're first getting started, don't have even enough money to pay even for a co-working space.
Exactly, yeah.
So what we're doing is we're piloting a program at the Live Oak branch where people can come and use a co-working space to get started while they're getting their business going, while they're making their first connections, to get the co-working space on a basic level so that as they become more successful, they can come to a more formal co-working space with more amenities.
That's a wonderful way to create opportunity.
Yeah.
To create all kinds of opportunity.
And also
not
for
only economic.
teenagers all the way to people coming back into the workforce, we serve a wide variety of ages.
I think one thing we haven't had traditionally in our buildings is very good teen spaces.
Well,
If you look at Scotts Valley, they did this marvelous job creating this magnificent teen space.
Yeah.
And right after school lets out, it's crazy. It's so busy. And especially with the junior high school students sort of into 10th grade, before they have the part-time job, I think parents are looking for constructive places after school. So one of the things I think you're going to see in the new buildings is a better way to manage the needs of that clientele.
And I think it's wonderful and appropriate, really. I've taken a long look at services that are provided by the city and the county, and one of the underserved populations is teens for some reason.
Yes,
agree.
You think there would be more
absolutely
teen
is.
centers, more teen opportunities, and more opportunities for them to do good things with their lives. So we have about, I think, a minute or so. I did want to mention that just logistically, having the reference desk right in front when you walk in instead of kind of way in the back is a wonderful innovation.
Oh, good.
That is fantastic.
Good.
And the folks are welcoming, they're helpful, they're everything you'd
Wonderful.
want the reference desk to be. But in the last minute or so, to give us a takeaway on what we're going to look for in our library system in the next decade, and hopefully both you'll be both around to lead that charge.
Well, you know, in a minute, I can't say everything. It's going to be amazing. And
is
we're
gonna
so
be
excited.
Amazing work, yeah.
We have wonderful jobs,
Yeah.
and we work with wonderful people,
Yeah.
and this community is fantastic. I think people need to step into the library now, even
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
Right.
before the buildings happen, because I don't think they'll recognize it if they haven't been there for a while. And I think they need to keep coming back because really great things are happening.
Well, Susan Nemitz, thank you so much for all of your great work. Janis O'Driscoll, thank you for all your great work. Our Santa Cruz Public Library system, a wonderful system, a place to learn, a place to grow, a place to engage, and these are the folks right here that really are making it happen, so we're delighted to have you here with us.
Thank you so much
and
for
thank you so
asking
much
us.
for your good works. This is Steve Pleich. Tune in again next week when we'll have another program highlighting another wonderful nonprofit organization doing great work in our community, similar to what our Santa Cruz Public Library system does each and every day. So
Thank
take
you.
care, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.